there's something we have to realize, that God has put within us, each one, the plan for our life. Okay? When we realize who it is that's in us and who has the power. See, all power and authority is given to me, he said. So go. So we go. We're carrying the power in us. We're carrying the one that has all the answers. We're carrying the one that makes the enemy shake. Okay? When we understand that, and we understand it is not me, it's him. In myself, I am nothing. Okay? If I get out from being in Christ, I'm hopeless. But in him, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You understand? I have seen such things happen that just make my mind wonder, how could I do that? And then I remember, I didn't do it, he did. But he chose to do it through me. Quite often, when I'm going into a meeting and if I'm preaching or something, here's how I pray. See ya. Here's how I pray. Lord, there's no one here better than me. There's no one here worse than me. Use me. Okay. And then I name some of the things I like to be used in. I love prophesying, so I name prophecy. I love the word of knowledge, so I name the word of knowledge. I love to see miracles happen, so I name that. Name them all. Amen. Touch every base. Doesn't hurt. He's more willing to use someone who's willing to be used than we think he is. Okay? But when we get into our promise, and how we get in there is by knowing who's in us. That's a secret you've been waiting for. Just by knowing who's there. And then we can walk in. Remember, he said, every place that your foot shall step, I'll give it to you. There's a time we were in this church, and the church was always meeting in hotel ballrooms. At first we met in people's homes, but we got too big for that. So we met in hotel ballrooms. And once the ballroom was being busy on Sunday, so we met in the bar. Yeah. That was a humbling experience for our leaders. But anyways, then we decided we want to put up a building because we started a school. And so we saw this property and we walked around the property. Now, you have to understand, I went to a church that never took offerings. Never once in all the years I went to that church did they ever take an offering. Never once did they give a message about money. Okay? So we want to buy this land. So we walked around the land. And by now, I was the one in charge of the money for the church, because we were supporting missionaries all over the world, even though we never took offerings. And we were a church that never believed that the government should be in control, so nobody got a tax receipt, and they still give. So we needed $50,000 for this land. Next time I opened the box, there was a check for $50,000 in it. You see, because when they put me in charge of the money, what they used to do before, the guy that was in charge, whenever anybody'd see them, they'd just give them money. And I thought, I don't like doing that. I might end up spending the wrong money sometime. I don't want that responsibility. So I built a nice little box that I put in the back of the church and told people, if you want to give, put it in there. Save it till Sunday and put it in. Then I got a couple guys with me when I opened it up. But that day we needed $50,000. And there was a check for $50,000 in the box. Every step, God will give it to you. So if you want to go into the promised land, you just got to start walking with the faith of who is within you. If you believe you have a gift, walking in that gift is the promised land. Okay? Walking in the gift is being in the promised land. It was prayed something about rest tonight. Rest is your inheritance. Rest is your inheritance. Rest is knowing if Christ is in me, I can just kick back. Whatever he says will be done. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. See, if we fully understand that, we don't have to ask for his will to be done. We're declaring his will be done. Okay? If you won't do it, you get someone else to. Mm-hmm. We can receive inheritance from our natural parents the same as we can receive from God. Yes. Hopefully, if your parent was a witch doctor, you don't inherit that. But you inherit the good things. Okay? What you have to do is take a step into the unknown. For me, being a missionary was an unknown. I was the first person in my family to be saved. A family of 13 children. My father never got saved. He died coming home from prison. But my mother, 2 years before she died. You see, what happened was, some of my family used to go to a church. But it was only a church you went to if you didn't have something else to do on Sunday. And it was one of these kind of churches when they had greeters at the door. But the greeter was always looking at someone else when they shook their hand. It was definitely an unspirit-filled church. So when I got saved into this Holy Ghost, Spirit-filled, charismatic church, I made everyone in my family unhappy. They didn't want to be around me. So my mother wanted to come to church with me, but she wanted to go to church with them. And so sometimes she'd go one and sometimes the other. But finally she got saved. And 2 years after that she died. But I knew she was fully saved. Mm-hmm. But my oldest brother had died in a swimming accident. He drowned. So my mother was deathly scared of going in the water. So baptized like this. Gets rid of some of your religion, doesn't it? Yeah. That it has to be a certain way. I was preaching to these churches one time down east in the States. And they asked me some questions. Well, how do you baptize out in Kenya? I said, well, when we can, we use a reservoir, or they had fish ponds. That was the funniest one, baptizing in a fish pond with fish going between your legs. Going between your legs. You were scared the guy's going to get a fish in his mouth. But what they were after was, it had to be full submersion. I said, okay, what happened? Because in Kenya we have lots of water where we live. I said, what about, I have a friend who is a missionary in Australia, where it only rains every 3 or 4 years. They said, well, just take them to a lake, because they were right beside the Great Lakes. I said, there aren't lakes around. Well, take them to the river. There are no rivers. Only once every 4 years. Well, it's an island. Take them to the ocean. I said, the ocean isn't close to many of them. So I said, what they do, take a glass of water and then they spit it on someone and baptize them. They said, no, that's not of God. Yeah, you understand? Certain things have to come to get rid of our religion so that we'll walk in the things that God has for us. And what He has for each one of us might be different than the other. So if we start judging someone, probably we're judging because of how we see it or how God works with me, not how He wants to work with you. So I was just saying that God is looking now for priests. You know, in the church today, we don't need priests. Because a priest was only to offer up sacrifices. And Jesus is the sacrifice. But then He calls all of us priests, kings and priests. So He wants all of us. You know, when Joshua was going across Jordan, he didn't lead the people like Moses did. He sent the priests out, who were sons of the priest, which was very good for showing that the sons of God. Okay. So the priests walked out into the water, and then the rest could walk through. The priests are us. Each one of us is a priest. And what we offer to God is obedience to what He has called us for. God calls some to have a gift of healing. I think today God isn't calling the great big ministers, these big TV evangelists. I was watching this guy one time, and he was talking about faith. And this was a man that prayed for people and they got healed. Faith. Have faith. Have faith. Send me this much money and God will bless you. If you want to be blessed, why don't you send me money? That's what I thought. If I'm going to be blessed by sending him money, he should send me money and maybe he'll be blessed. But the reason his support was drying up is because God wants to use all of us now. Not just big names. Every one of us going to a mosque. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Yeah, praise the Lord.
Amen.
Some of the times with the one Rahab I had out in Kenya, I used to deal with this one Muslim guy. And one time after he had been out hugging me and everything outside, I went inside the shop and this Muslim guy who was an imam, he said to me, "How come you spend time with that young man there?" I said, "Because God loves him." And he just couldn't understand that. You see? So one thing you have to do when you go to the mosque, just love them.
Just be yourself.
Don't tell them they're going to hell. They don't need to hear that. Just tell them God loves them. And I love you. That's how many Muslims around the world are being saved. Because of people, not just ministers, loving them. And they get saved. If God has given you a gift, I think I might have told you, I love seeing things happen. So I love to pray for the sick or hurt or injured or whatever. So I do that as often as I can. Not that everyone gets healed, you understand? But that's not up to me. God, that might be a Rahab in that person's life. Who knows? But I'll do what I'm called to do. But I've seen more healings than not. So we just do. We walk into. We step into the Jordan. We step in to the barrier between us and the promised land. And we have to do it by faith. And we have to do it alone. You're not going to get someone to lead you. This Stephen Hill, did you read that story about Catherine Kuhlman? Does anybody know who Catherine Kuhlman was?
Yes.
Yeah, great lady of God. But she had a fear. She had a fear about walking out onto the platform. So much so that the door handle to get there was a hindrance to her. She really had a struggle just to open the door. And sometimes, and she had a great ministry. So don't feel bad if you're a little fearful to step into the water. or to step into what you're called to. But he that is in you is greater than he who is in the world. And every time, he is with you. Okay? And every time causes you to grow, to give you more confidence for the next time. I used to, when I first started out, I used to think God depended on me. When I started realizing I have to depend on him, it made a difference. Total difference. Because I don't depend on my own strength. Mm-hmm. In my own strength, I love it when we worship and people say, raise your hands. My shoulders are in bad shape and it's hard. It hurts to raise my hands. But I do. You understand? So if it was in my own strength, like this one man I was talking with one time, and the fellow in Mexico, I said, how do you know who to point at? How do you know who God's going to touch? He said, just watch. And you'll see. If you open your eyes to see. And it wasn't long before I could tell who. Because you can know if somebody stands there like this, probably not going to get touched. When people come to the altar like this, I don't even bother praying for them because they're not ready to be touched. But you get to know these things. And understand as soon as you start believing it's by your strength you're going to fail. It's not going to work. We rest in the fact of who is here. He died for everyone. Not everyone has heard, but they might hear through you. You might be the one with the exact thing for the time. Somebody else might not be there at that time. You can't call them up. You can't call up your pastor every time and say, Pastor, one time this fellow came to me and he said, can you come help? My daughter's filled with demons. So Bible school was in. So I went and got 2 students. And my watchman, he said, come along with me. So we got there and here's this girl laying on the floor. She's foaming at the mouth and slapping around and everything. I said, okay, you guys pray for her. Okay. And one guy started shouting at the devil and everything, and this girl just started beating him up. And I was just watching, because you gotta learn. So he soon pulled off, and they started standing back like I was, and watching and sort of praying. And then pretty soon another one would go and try, and she'd start beating him up. But you see, they were like the sons of Sceva. They were praying in the name of the God Bob follows.
Yeah.
Okay? So it took a while until they realized it wasn't in the name of the God that I follow. It was the name of the one inside them. But all this time, the Lord revealed to me that the demons came because of the mother, who was a women's leader in the church. Her husband was an elder. And God revealed that to me. So I went over to her, and I cast the demon out of her. As soon as I did, one of my students laid hands on the girl. She stood up, delivered. You understand? Sometimes we have to learn things the hard way. But if we trust in Him who is here, not in Him who our pastor preached, you see, pretty soon I started sending my watchman out by himself. My watchman used to be a student of ours. So I started sending him out. Pretty soon he's got a deliverance ministry. Pretty soon they stopped asking for me. They started asking for him. You understand? Let God anoint you to do things. There are certain things, sure, call the pastor. But certain things, do it yourself. Walk into the water. Start trusting that Jesus is in you. He is the hope, not your own strength. And sometimes the pastors want to rest. Okay.
Yes.
So when they went into the water, it was carried by the priest's sons. In each case, it's God who is leading. Okay? God led through Moses, and God leads through you when you step in the water. When you realize that you're a priest. There's a scripture I want to read, Ephesians 3:19.
Enlighten your heart to your understanding.
Wayne can tell us. And to know the love of Christ, which far surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled up to all fullness,
Yes.
so that you may have the richest experience of God's presence in your life.
Amen.
Completely filled and flooded with God Himself.
Amen.
We have to come to that knowledge that He is filling us. And then 20. Now to Him who is able to carry out His purpose. He is able to carry out His purpose. Do superabundantly more than all we dare to ask or think, according to His power that is at work in us.
Amen.
His power that's at work in us. But we don't let it work. We don't take that step into the promised land. We've been waiting for a few weeks to get in the promised land, but all we had to do was step in. Okay? We have to you will stay in the desert until you realize Christ is in you. That's why last week I had a problem of praying for Christ to be in someone. He's in me. Hallelujah. I don't want anybody to pray more in me. He's in there. I know it. Okay, I don't have to pray for it. And I hope I don't have to pray for him to be in you. But I am going to pray that your eyes and ears will be open.
Amen.
To see that he is there. You are already chosen.
Yes.
You are a chosen generation.
Yes. Amen.
He chose generations for 20 years, or 40 years in the wilderness, but they wouldn't follow. Then he's been choosing generations for 2,000 years, and people won't follow. They won't step in. But now is time for the manifestation of the sons of God.
Amen.
And daughters, by the way. Sons includes daughters.
Amen.
If you have enough faith to do it without Moses, you needed Moses to get you out of Egypt. But now if you have enough faith that he is in you, and that he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world, what's going to stop you? What can stop you from the love of God? There's a list of things you can ask. But in the wilderness, we found out we carry the presence of God. The priests here carried the ark, the presence of God. But it was the people knowing they were carrying the presence of God that go in. You go into your promise knowing that you're carrying the presence of God. And you're carrying the presence of God. Now, what happened when they got into the promised land? Was it all rosy?
No.
They had to fight to gain their land. They had to, you see, the enemy doesn't give up easy. You have to get rid of the Amalekites, Hittites, Jebusites, the lust, all the ites.
Yeah, all the ites.
Today we call them lust of the eyes, pride of life, lust of the flesh. Someone once said, everything's the devil. No, the world, the flesh, and the devil. The world is there first, then the flesh. And the flesh includes us, we're in the way. But if we realize and we start to identify with him, and if we have a weakness, know that once we get in there, he's going to help us get rid of it. Okay? We just have to get into the land. We have to walk by faith into the land. Then these things will start dropping off. Now, some of them drop off easy. Some of them don't. Some we have to say, God, I can't control this. This height is too big for me. And he'll help you. Maybe he'll send another Rahab to help you. Maybe what you need is to fail sometimes to get rid of pride.
True.
Maybe you have to sell all, give to the poor, and follow me. You know, of all that, given to the poor was the easiest. Because you can always find poor people. Our family this year decided we're not going to give gifts to each other. We're just going to find someone to bless. Take what you would have taken to buy all these gifts and bless someone. God within you. Now, here's a sentence comes from this book. God within you, not the God above you. Just let that sink in. God within you, not the God above you. Many of us pray for the Spirit to come down. Many of us pray for God to come down. He's here. And it's His work He wants you to do. So you are the priest. You're the carrier. You're the carrier of His presence. So you, once you realize that, the realizing is stepping into the promised land. Stepping into the kingdom. And when you step in, then you're in the place where the king rules. Okay? Any questions? Okay, Wayne.
Psalms 103:19 says, He established His throne in heaven, and His kingdom rules over all. So His kingdom is here on earth,
Right.
as it is in heaven.
That's right.
Praise God.
You see, what happens is we have to start realizing that. When the church can start realizing that, the church is going to have so much power, and they won't have so much fighting. There's so much fighting between the churches, between the leaders in the church. I come from a town where if you only go there every 4 years, every church, you'll see the same people, but they're in a different church. Because if they don't hear what they want here, they go there. And they'll move around because they'll never find what they're looking for until they start looking in here. And when the church starts looking in here, that Christ is in us, the power that will be poured out. If God has given you a gift to teach, just start doing that. Because you'll get through the Bible pretty soon. But just in the experience you have, teach that. You see, we can't teach beyond what we have. Because we can't give more than what we have. Okay? That's why a Bible school has more than one teacher. And that's why more than one teacher have different views on things. The Bible school I went to, they prided themselves in the fact that each one of the teachers had different theologies. Different thoughts of how the end times should be. Different thoughts about the rapture, for instance, or about millennium. All of them had different views. But they prided themselves in that because what it made us do was to start see what He was saying to us instead of following a doctrine of a man. Okay? And that's a good thing. It creates a healthy environment. If you and I can look at things differently but still know we're brothers and can work together,
Amen.
that's what's important.
Amen.
Because no one person, other than Jesus, but no one person has all the answers.
Yeah.
So the whole thing comes down to your personal intimacy with Jesus, and then in that relationship, then you have the experiential. You have the experience, like when people talk about revelational knowledge. Then when you have that experience, and it becomes real to you, then you will live it out, and then you won't really struggle with doubts and things. And so,
In that area, yeah.
yeah.
There are some things I probably have doubts in, but I don't know right now. But the main thing is, when we start to see that, we start to realize He put that there because we're a son.
Excuse me.
Because we're a son.
But do you mean
He put Himself there.
Oh,
He put His fullness.
yeah.
Not only just Jesus. Because we know that we're also at the same time seated with Him in heaven. Okay? You understand that, don't you? We're ruling and reigning with Him from heaven right now. And He's within us. Okay? But the devil can't do that.
No, we sure can't.
The devil's only one. He can only be in one place. Okay? So, that's why I question a lot of people who think the devil's after him. Because if I say the devil's after me, that's pride. That I'm big enough that the devil cares for me. You understand? But he has a lot of helpers.
Whispering.
He has 1/3 of those angels.
Yeah.
Okay? But there's still 2 for every one.
That's right.
So if one comes to you, there's 2 to fight him off. And I don't have to do it. Hallelujah.
Yeah. Praise God.
If we can do that. Tonight, if you can allow the Holy Spirit to open your spiritual eyes and ears so that you can see things the way the Father sees them. Remember, Jesus only did what He saw His Father doing. So if we're going to do that, we're going to have to see what the Father's doing. And He only spoke the words that the Father was speaking. So we have to be able to hear what He's saying. So I'm going to pray for you right now. Father, I pray that every eye will be open. Open to see not only what is ahead for them, but who you are and what you have done personally for each one here. Let them see what you are doing to the people that come in front of them. Let them see why you have made them the way you made them. Let them see that inheritance you have given to only them. Let them know beyond a doubt that it is you that is working.
Yes.
Let them have ears of the Spirit to be able to hear what you are saying.
Yes.
To be able to hear that still small voice. Or to hear the booming strong trumpet. Let them hear. Father, let them shut up and listen to what you have to say. Let them know, Lord, that you are willing to speak to them and to speak to them the things that are on your heart.
Yes.
Father, open up to each one an understanding that you are there listening to them.
Yes.
You are listening for them to hear what is on their heart and to speak to them what is on your heart. Lord, as the days go on, I pray that each one would walk into their inheritance. Walk into the things you have for the church.
Yes.
A church as a body and a church as individuals.
Amen.
Use each one of these ones to be ones who can show others how to get here,
Yes.
Yes.
how to get where you have brought them tonight, into your presence. Let your presence in them be so visible that others will be able to say, there's someone who has been with God. Let the love that you have shed in them pour out on those Rahabs around them. Let them look for you to do far more abundantly more than they can ask. Help them to see that you have the big picture and you can direct them, Lord. Open those eyes and open those ears. In Jesus' name. Amen. Now, I expect the night the man prayed for me for my eyes and ears to be open. I was in Buffalo, New York, at the Lovejoy Church with a pastor that didn't even know who I was. But God had said, I'm going to pray for Bob McNeil first. From that time, God has taken to every place I went and opened eyes and ears. Okay? So I'm expecting to hear testimonies on the 9th about how your eyes and ears have been opened and what you saw and what you heard. Okay? Because God is going to do a work. There's 8 here. Jesus had 12. And look what happened.
I have a little testimony. I was leaving church and I wasn't really feeling well and I was just leaving, and then this lady came up to me and she just said, excuse me, can I ask you a question? And she said, and I said yes, and she just said, can you tell me how to be saved? She said, I want to ask God to save me. And but the funny thing was, I said, you don't have to make an appointment with the pastor or anything. I said, I can I can help you, pray with you right now. But then when I went to pray for her, my mind went totally blank. I started praying, everything instantly just went blank, just for a few seconds. And I know, but it just went. But then I just spoke. But after a few seconds, I just asked God to help me. And then after a few seconds, I don't know why, he just did a blank. But yeah, she just said, I'm ready to be saved.
Praise
And I mean, just as I was walking out the door, and it was totally it was just God. Yeah.
So, here's a question. You remember the man on the cross beside Jesus? He said, what did he say? He said to the one who was mocking, we are here because we did wrong. He was confessing. Okay? When he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom, he was recognizing who Jesus was. Okay? So he was also recognizing his need. He was confessing his sin, that we've done wrong. So basically, when somebody's saying, I need to be saved, there's not much work to do. That could be why you've went blank. There's not a lot of work to do. See, God's already called him. Like I say, nobody had to lead me in a prayer. God just called me. He said it's time. And he sent a prophet to prophesy that it was my time to be saved.
She had a cab waiting.
She had a cab waiting. Well, that's good.
Yeah, she had a cab waiting, and so, yeah, it just took, yeah.
So she
And
said,
she asked for Bibles and everything.
that's the same as a thief on the cross. Oh, remember me. She was confessing all.
Yeah.
She was ready. So I have no doubt that whatever you said, you see, God doesn't want us to put him in a box.
That's right.
Okay? God doesn't want us to put him, it has to happen this way. That's part of our old religion, our old prejudices, that it has to work this way. I love it when those things happen because I know I'm going to see that lady in heaven.
Amen.
Okay? Because it's so simple. It's so simple that when we have that love flowing through us, people know who to come to.
Yeah.
Well, like that mean old miner that came to me one night. Nobody else would come talk to me because I had Bibles around and I was playing the Bible on tape stuff. But he came. He was a drunkard. This was in Canada, in a mine. And he was having problems in his home. He said, could you come and talk to my wife and I tonight? Hallelujah, I knew they were ready. So I went there. It was simple. Before, I wasn't even in there 5 minutes and they were down on their knees crying and accepting the Lord. You understand? Because when people are ready, they're ready. And it's because God draws them. Nobody comes to him other than God draws them.
That's right.
At the first of my ministry, I tried to talk people into getting saved. I preached a message one time. There was about 700-800 people there. And I preached a message. It was so good. I almost went to the altar myself. It was so good. Not one person came and got saved.
Yeah.
And after I said, Lord, I worked hard on that message. It was good.
That was the best one ever.
He said, but it was your message.
Yeah.
He said, that wasn't me speaking, that was you. He said, I only blessed my messages. So the next time I was speaking about tithing, and about 50 people come forward and got saved.
Yeah.
Go figure. He said, and God says,
My time.
see, I told you,
Yeah.
I can do it in spite of you.
Yeah. Get outside.
Good, we'll see you on the 9th.
Lord, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Oh,